So this is part 2 of my explanation of how I came to discover my identity. Where I left off in part 1, I was in August, September of 2014, and I was still married. I discovered that I had a twin flame who turned out to be the primary incarnation of Cupid. But I didn't know any of this yet. So to back up a little bit, during that whole year that I was describing, when I was married, I was obsessively researching all things related to truth. Took me a really long time. I'd have to go through gates, if you will, of belief with 9/11, and then it took me a really long time to get my head around Sandy Hook, and a part of that was starting to listen to Gnostic teachings, and there was specifically this man, Neil Kramer, who explained how people who know how to do such things can harness energy from different realms and do one thing somewhere and have something else transpire somewhere else. And that's how a lot of these false flag events are manifested. Crazy, fascinating stuff. But yeah, I was learning about multidimensionality and doing like some very surface level readings into different world religions. Just trying to learn all the time, try to figure out, because I'd always wanted to know, why is this world so fucked up? Like, why is everything so upside down? Why do horrible people run the world, and how did it get to be this way? And I felt like I was finally starting to get some answers about that. And when I finally got to the point where I understood that these elites were worshiping Satan or Lucifer, I was terrified. I mean, I had all that scary stuff going on at the same time, but I was in fear. And I couldn't, as dur as it is now, I couldn't wrap my head around there being a higher God than these dark gods that clearly must exist. I wasn't ready for that. And you also have to understand, as a non-believer, I wasn't that like I didn't care whether or not God existed. I thought about it a lot. It just, to me, felt impossible for there to be a God that could allow for so much suffering. And if God did exist, then he clearly fucking hated me. And I just, I was bitter. And then I came to understand the purpose of suffering and how this is a realm where suffering can exist. And in that way, it's a gift because it helps us gain wisdom. So yeah, I was just having this massive spiritual awakening. And in September, I started doing Kundalini yoga. And I'd read about how, that's not something to be undertaken lightly, because if you awaken your Kundalini before you're really ready for it, it will appear as if you're having a psychotic breakdown. But that didn't scare me too much. Kind of funny aside, the place where I was doing this yoga was run by a woman that it was literally in a Freemason lodge. So she was harnessing the energy for whatever rituals they do there. And because I had trusted her, like she was like our wise sensei kind of woman. And when I had finally discovered my identity and I felt like there was nobody that I could talk to, she was one of the first people I went to after class. And she listened to me for a while, spell out like all of these puzzle pieces. And then she goes, I would advise you right now to shut your mouth and stop talking. It was so terrifying. And that kind of thing started happening. Like when I tried to tell my husband that I was putting together these puzzle pieces and that like it kind of looked like I might be the Da Vinci Code, he would listen and look at me while I was talking. And then as soon as I was done, he would change the subject. He'd ask me like, well, okay, what are we doing for dinner? And I'm like, the fuck? Like, I'm sorry, did you not just hear what I said? And then, you know, that kept happening. And it was always unnerving. I understand it now, like there's like a higher dimensional way that this all works. And if somebody is not prepared to hear these truths, it's a wavelength of energy that will not penetrate their energy. Another way of looking at it is he might have had an angel kind of like put an energetic blockage over him because he wasn't meant to hear these things yet. Or you could look at it that his demons, the demon that was inhabiting him, wouldn't allow him to hear it. They're all true. Just depends on which dimensional perspective you're looking at it from. But anyway, yeah, people just could not hear this story. So it was just getting really strange with my husband. And then after that equinox incident, I guess it was like synchronicities off the hook. Like I'd be thinking something, driving down the road, and immediately see a billboard that gave me an answer. Or, and this was big, songs would come on the radio that would completely describe what I was thinking or what I was doing, or it would have like the lyrics would have like a dialogue with me of what was going on in my head. It wasn't creepy, it was beautiful and magical. And I felt this energy around me that I'd never felt before, and it was wonderful. And at first I was like, okay, so I'm an angel. I'm an incarnated angel on earth. I started looking into light workers and incarnated angels. And that all fit and made sense, except the fact that I'm like, you guys must like not have done your research on me because I don't think I'm your girl. I thought I was, like I wasn't a bad person, but I didn't think I was a good enough person for anything like that. And there was, alright, so it was late September, I'm gonna say like the 26th, 27th, 28th, and I had felt this need to do some kind of psychedelics like all summer, but I always knew it wasn't something I had to go looking for. It was going to fall into my lap at the right time. And this one day my sister tells me that she and her bestie are going to trip acid and would I like to join. So I'm like, there we go. And there was nothing spectacular about the acid trip itself. It was the next day. And I'd always had these experiences of these beautiful, magical days after an acid trip where everything would like sparkle and it was like the world was alive in a different way. And I was having one of those days, and my husband and I were going to a football game, not incidentally, at the stadium where I had first met Brendan, Cupid, as an adult. I'd met him as a child, a memory which would come to me very soon thereafter. And at this football game tailgating was the man that I'd recognized as my sister's twin flame. And his name is Paul Apostolon, which is interesting because it's like Paul the Apostle. And yeah, there's a whole interesting story about that. But I told her she should come out. And my husband had gotten front row tickets, like, I don't know how he did it, but it was amazing. And we go and sit down there, and these obnoxious, like, just stereotypical Connecticut frat boys come down and start harassing us, telling us we're not in the right seats, we couldn't possibly be in the right seats, and that they demanded to see our tickets. And my sister and I weren't having it because it was clearly, like, racially motivated. And it just turned into this argument. I had to stop my sister from physically, like, attacking one of these guys. And because we were in the front row, there were all of these people that were watching this happen. And I'd been having dreams for months about being in a stadium and having people watching me, and it was coming true. And it just got to the point where I, like, had a stern talking to these little frat boys, and I think I literally told them to check their privilege, because as anti-SJW as I may be these days, so they're not wrong about everything. Everybody's right and everybody's wrong about, anyway, these guys were just such douchebags. They insinuated that my sister and I were prostitutes. It was awful, but anyway, and everyone was watching me yell at these guys, and at the end I told them to go fuck themselves, and I had to walk up this long stairway back to the stadium concourse, and I could hear people's thoughts, and I'd say about 3/4 of them, mind you, this is University of Connecticut, so, you know, that's the kind of crowd it was. About 3/4 of the people were like, angry black woman, and 1/4 of them were like, good for her, standing up for herself. But I heard some really hurtful things in people's heads walking up those stairs, and as soon as I got to the bathroom, I vomited like I'd never vomited in my life, and I could swear that demons were coming out of me. It was the way I was retching. It was something else. And I went to, I had told my sister and husband to stay there to enjoy the game, that I was leaving and I'd meet them back at home. And I was going to take my husband's truck. His keys were hidden around the car. But once I got out to the parking lot, I couldn't find the car, and I was lost. I was crying. The whole thing was just horrific. It was really horrific. And when I finally found the truck, my husband was already in there. It was really weird, and he was so mad at me. He's like, you just caused such a scene. I'm like, I caused a scene? Like, what are you talking about? And I said, like, it was clearly this racially motivated thing, and you didn't stand up for me at all. Like, for all his wonderful qualities, my husband was never stood up for me. And he's like, no, it's all in your head. It wasn't like that. And he's like, get in the fucking truck. And I felt fear again from him. Before that, we'd been having such a wonderful day together. And I got in the truck, and even like a couple of friends of his were out there. They're like, are you okay, Heather? Like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. They could see something wasn't right with him. And you have to understand, he was the most, like, kind, fun, gentle kind of guy. And in the truck, he was driving like a maniac. He almost ran over children. And he was fully possessed, like, fully. And he just kept saying, you fucking cunt, whore, bitch, fucking cunt, whore, bitch, like, over and over and over again. And I'm in the passenger seat crying, like, and I kept saying, I love you, why are you doing this? And it only made him more angry. And then I started fighting with him, and then that wasn't working. And by the time we got back to our house, I had taken off my wedding ring. I'm like, this is over. I can't. And he left, and I told him not to come back. And I packed up some stuff because I just felt he was going to come back, and I was scared of him. And I went in a hotel room that night, and I had my holistic psychiatrist had told me about, when I was telling him about how odd my husband was acting, he asked me if I knew about spirit attachments, and I didn't believe in ghosts or the spiritual realm at all, so I just put that on a shelf. And then I'm like, I think I might look up the spirit attachment thing. And I did that night in the hotel, and everything fit. Everything. And yeah, weird stuff happened that night. Like, there was some concert on TV. I want to say it was like one of those like global citizen kind of concerts, and it was Jay-Z, and everybody was doing, you know, his sign, and I'd been learning about, you know, all of those symbols, and I could feel this dark energy like coming from the television, and I just started to, in one day, like, I was seeing the world differently and realizing like all of this, you know, Illuminati pop star stuff that I'd been learning about. It was about harnessing energy, and that the spirit realms were most definitely real, and all I wanted was to run into the arms of Brendan. The hotel room that I got was very close to his condo, but he was like, stay away, I can't get involved in that, like, no. And I was so afraid, and I felt so alone. I talked to my sister the next day thinking like, okay, she's on my same page. She saw and experienced all of me. Like, she almost went to like wring this guy's neck. And she's like, no, Heather, it wasn't really like that. Like, once, you know, you left, everything was cool. That wasn't a racially motivated incident. What are you, like, don't be a drama queen. It was insane. Now, you have to also understand that that night, when my husband had driven me home, the whole point was, and I told him, you have to stay with Courtney. She doesn't have a car. Well, she does have a car, but she doesn't know where she is at all. She doesn't have a cell phone on her, like, or maybe she, whatever it was. I was really worried all day, like, we can't lose my sister. And he left her there alone. And she had a horrible incident trying to find her car. And then I guess she finally found my husband, and he crashed her car in a parking lot, like in a Burger King parking lot, because Burger King is BK and BK is Brendan Kelly. Like, everything just connects back to the story. And whatever was in him jumped to her. And it's never been the same with her ever since. If you understand the bigger story of like how Satan, Pretty, the Demiurge, my son, my first creation is light fear in this fallen world of duality where I left the Father. He's obsessed with me and keeping me in this game. And he can take over anyone who doesn't have the full armor of God. And even then, he can worm his way in. Some people call it Legion. And it always makes me think of this horror movie called It Follows. And that's what happens, is he will inhabit the spirit of the people closest to me to try to tear me down. Not because he doesn't love me or he hates me, because he's obsessed with me staying in the game. And if I kill myself, then I stay in the game. So he infects people to try to drive me crazy, because If you can imagine not being able to trust anyone or anything. Anyway, I should stop here and move on to part 3. Love you. Sorry, this is harder than I thought it was going to be.